Hey, what's going on, everyone? Sorry for taking a little bit to log in today. I was actually having trouble going live in the group for some reason. Give me one sec. Let me unwind these things. Hey, what up, Dale? Hope all is well, man. Let me know what you're doing this weekend. I was actually supposed to have a guest today, but we had to reschedule last minute, so I'll be doing a solo and just kind of throwing stuff back and forth. Freddie, what is up? Hope all's well, man. Okay, let's see. All right. Boom. Hey, what's going on, you guys? Okay, so I'll wait a little bit for some people to get in here. So we got about 8 to 9 people already. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. It grows out fast, so got lucky there. And again, I was supposed to have a guest today, but we had to reschedule last minute, so I'll be doing one on my own. Alex is in the house. Good to see you, man. Okay, so drinking my organic coffee, as I always say, but never out of plastic. In terms of organic brands, some people ask me what coffee brand I buy. Honestly, I don't know pretty much anything about coffee, so probably the brands I buy are just not the best. But I usually get mine from like natural grocers or like Whole Foods or something like that. Even from time to time, Costco has really good deal on organic, at least USDA certified organic coffee brands for a pretty reasonable price. So an option for you if you are big into coffee. I just kind of drink 1 cup a day, so for me it's not like a big deal, and honestly I don't really think it gives me any energy. I just kind of do it just on workout days as part of a habit, like a ritual, basically. Nothing too crazy. So you guys, today's topic, I just wanted to cover some basic ways on George, good to see you. Freddie's well. I just wanted to cover some basic aspects of what you can do if you're interested in creating change, and what I've seen through 17 years of coaching people, why a lot of people are very stubborn to create change, even when, at the bottom of their heart, it's something they know they want to do. In particular, of course, this is a health channel, so we're going to be focusing on health aspects, but just know this could be used for basically like anything, like personal relationships, finances, career advancements, etc., etc., and stuff of that sort. So in terms of the topic of health, I think like one of the biggest, there are many obstacles, but one of the biggest obstacles people have today in terms of creating real change is pathology has been normalized a tremendous amount in American culture in particular. And it's not me just making stuff up. I've listed countless statistics over many, many lives that I do here weekly, saying like 9 out of 10 American adults are metabolically sick right now. That's 90% of the population. I've also listed those studies and many other studies, like close to 800,000 Americans die from heart attacks every single year. Probably close to like 160,000 Americans die from cancer every year, 120,000 from type 2 diabetes, stuff of that sort. And it goes on, close to like 125,000 from strokes every single year, probably close to like 135,000 or so die from properly prescribed medical drugs every single year as well. And stuff of that sort. So the statistics are pretty startling, and you really don't need any of those studies, although you can go on pubmed.gov and find them all yourself, and it's going to be very objectively obvious that America is in its worst mental and physical health that it's ever been, and I would say, especially having traveled all around the world, of course, you're starting to see a lot of mental and physical pathology as normalized behavior propping up everywhere as people begin to copy the U.S. more and more. But in the U.S., it's really, I guess, reached its peak and apex. Maybe not. Maybe it's even going to get worse. But it's the weekend, so don't even take my word for it. As I always say over and over and over again, just go outside, like literally anywhere in America, and probably 9 out of 10 American adults that you run into are clearly overweight. They're full of mental and physical pain. You can totally see it in their face. And although it's normal to see that, it's not normal at all. Okay, it's been normalized. It's common. Rather, that's the better word. It's very common, but it's not normal at all. And I've also done many corporate health lectures, and I mean, especially in that environment, I mean, it's extremely rare to find a person that's like mentally and physically well. And that appearance of excess body fat, etc., is a symptom and representation of a lot of internal turmoil. People don't just look like that because they're enjoying life and everything is going well. Although they may actually be like jolly and smile and stuff of that sort. A lot of times I found, especially with the obese population personally, it's kind of like a personality that's created to kind of distract from the person's appearance as well, because you'll pay attention to how funny they are or whatever, charismatic they are, and your attention will shift away from their appearance, which they're not too happy about and stuff of that sort. So that's the biggest thing. It's like you have to come to the realization that, like, hey, having excess lower chest fat or having like a huge belly or even like a medium-sized belly isn't normal, and they're signs of pathology to various degrees as well. Being on like managing various symptoms with various dangerous and harmful medical drugs isn't normal. It's very common, but it's not normal, and it's been normalized in our culture, but unfortunately to the detriment of the citizens, because I mean, they may tell you like, being on all these medical drugs, they help and that and that, this and that of that sort, but it's like you look at the person and they just don't look well. They don't look well, and if you think they do, then your standard for what wellness is has really dropped a tremendous amount. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's the case. So a lot of times, like especially when I finished my second book, I was giving a lot of grocery store tours and teaching people a lot about the food labeling and stuff of that sort. And from time to time, I mean, someone would come up and they'd be like, well, I'm eating all this processed food, this and that for X amount of years, and I'm completely fine. But then you look at the person and they're just like very overweight, even young. They're like in their mid-30s and just very overweight on, 2 or 3 different medical drugs. I know we like to refer to it as medicine, but it's a drug, okay? And it's a medical drug. It's a drug at the end of the day. And they're on that, having low back pain, etc. And just the fact that they would say they feel fine is already a representation of how much we as a culture have been numbing ourselves down a tremendous amount and decreasing our standards for like what health and wellness really is. Okay, so stuff of that sort. So if you see, some things like I personally would look for as red flags is like, oh, do I have like lower chest fat, excessive lower chest fat, or do I have like a belly that goes over my stomach, or am I on a bunch of medical drugs? Am I having sleepless nights? Am I having like erectile dysfunction? Am I having excessive anxiety, depression, anger issues? Am I not happy with my life? Am I not happy with my work, or the people I'm working with possibly? All of these things are signs of pathology to various degrees, and it's impossible for me to give you like exact or absolutes, because you would need the person to be exactly in front of you to focus on like what exactly works and doesn't work for them. So these are all just generalities that, of course, I'm just talking about from my observation and stuff of that sort. Or, like even things like sitting at a computer 8 to 10 hours a day, that's not normal either. And the human body has not evolved to do that, So of course, signs of pathology are going to arise if you continue to do that 5 or 6 days a week. And some people would be like, well, that's just what my job requires. Sure, but you have to also take into consideration that it could be that your job just doesn't facilitate mental and physical health, and then it's your responsibility to determine the cost of that paycheck or staying on that path, and if you're honestly okay with paying that cost. So, you get X amount of dollars, but in exchange, you're going to have a bad looking physique, you're going to have orthopedic issues, back pain, neck pain, hip pain, etc., excessive weight gain, never having any time for yourself because you're overly busy, being surrounded by coworkers that aren't doing mentally or physically well themselves. I know they're nice people and stuff of that sort oftentimes, but it's very rare to run into a person that's actually doing mentally and physically well at all, like anywhere, especially like in the corporate environments, you know. So if you're around that energy, especially if you're still working in person, if you're around that energy and around those kind of employees, that kind of energy is going to affect you at one point or another, you know, no matter how much positive reframing you do, or changing the good or the bad into the good, or whatever, you know, it's just going to have an effect on you. Just like, kind of as an extreme example, living next to a nuclear power plant or something. Of course, you can eat organic food, you know, or a highly polluted air, living in a highly polluted air. Of course, you could eat organic food, have great water, and work out and stuff. But if you're living next to that level of toxicity, is eventually going to impact your cardiovascular system. And then, of course, all of the systems in the human body are interconnected. So as one system, such as your circulatory system or your cardiovascular system, starts going down, it's going to have a dragging down effect on literally everything, including your mental state as well. Because last time I checked, it's like you can't live without your lungs or your heart or your kidneys or your brain. You know, you kind of need everything to be working together and stuff of that sort. So I think that's the first step. And that's honestly the toughest step for a lot of people to overcome, because you don't know something's wrong if that's been your whole entire life, you know. And unfortunately, people have been living in mental, physical pathology their whole entire life, and they have normalized it as part of their life. So it's really tough to convince people otherwise, especially if they're in their 20s and 30s, where in their 40s and their health problems start to accumulate and they start looking pretty bad at that point. Then they become more open to it. But still, a lot of people are very closed down in their 50s. Once things start breaking down even more and they start looking even worse, even a higher percentage become more open to it. But still, it's fairly rare, unfortunately. The honest truth is a lot of Americans are going to normalize pathology and live in a state of mental and physical pathology their entire life. And unfortunately, a lot of them will have kids too, and pass these belief systems down to their kids, normalizing it in their kids as well. And like I always say, the biggest and most dangerous virus of all is a belief system that doesn't facilitate health conscious choices. And just like a normal virus, a belief system is spread from person to person, just like a virus. And it affects the person, it inflicts their belief system in the person, and then those actions, especially if they're not health conscious actions, eventually end up destroying the organism. But before that organism is destroyed, of course, unfortunately, the virus spreads to another friend or their kids, etc., and they live out their whole entire life that way, normalizing it as well. And unfortunately, it becomes kind of worse and worse generation by generation, until, of course, you know, someone is more of a free thinker and able to step back and realize that, hey, it's not normal for me to have all this lower chest fat, or for me to be very anxious all the time, or go to a job I hate, or sit at a computer all day, or have this huge belly, or have this poor blood work, or have these gut issues, have this erectile dysfunction, sleepless nights. That takes actually a really wise person to really sit back and listen to their body's many cries for help. It seems like common sense. It seems like very easy to do, and it is very easy to understand, to intellectually conceptualize. But that's not where the power is, you know. As I forget exactly where I got this quote, but, you know, knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power, you know. So especially applying those very simple to understand principles in a world today that doesn't facilitate health conscious choices for the most part. But that doesn't mean you can't live true to yourself and be health conscious as well. I mean, look at me. I'm doing it as well. You know, I'm 38 already and have been doing it consistently for pretty much my entire life, you know, professionally since I was 19 or so. Consistently, okay? So it's totally possible when, once again, because I didn't accept pathology as normal. So my story, as I've explained it to you guys in a few lives, you know, I went to the University of California, Irvine. I graduated from there. I believe it's been a while, but I believe back in 2009 or maybe 2010, I forgot exactly, probably 2009. And I was already coaching. I was already personal training and health coaching people while in college, but just super part time, like nothing big, maybe 10 hours a week. And then also I would take like 2 weeks off every quarter to study for finals and everything at that. So probably averaged out less than 10 hours a week. And what I saw there, especially when I was getting towards the end of the college, if you guys remember, it was that huge mortgage collapse, that big mortgage collapse. And it was like the tail end of that. Everyone was losing their job. There were kind of a lot of people were in a panic and stuff of that sort in terms of their financial insecurity. And towards the end of college, I was realizing like, hey, because I was training a lot of people in corporate and they're typically, like middle managers or district managers or above. And I already saw just through their experience and what they shared with me, what would happen if you go into that environment for like 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And it's typically like, a lot of excess weight gain, a lot of accelerated aging. Typically, a lot of people look much older than they actually are in those environments as well because of the high abundance of micro and macro stresses in that environment. Then plus like, the toxicity of some workplaces. You always have social politics and stuff of that sort, which could be intolerable, especially if you're dealing with an incompetent person on your team, or even worse, an incompetent leader, which is the worst, I'm sure everyone has had at least one experience of that throughout their life and stuff of that sort. So I already saw like, hey, that's not normal and that's not what I want to be. And I was already living a very health conscious lifestyle. Like at UCI, like literally my whole entire life revolved around going to the library and studying and the gym. And that's it. And then coaching people 10 hours a week. And I was also on the UCI paintball team for a while. So there was some traveling back and forth for competitions and stuff of that sort. But that's pretty much my whole life. And honestly, even graduating after college, it's pretty much stayed that way. Ryan, good to see you. It's been literally probably 5 years since I've seen him. Ryan is a former client of mine. Hope all is well. I saw Felix, Bobby, Richard, Paul, Bob. Good to see you. Thanks for always jumping in. Greg jumped in. Justin, Pendra. Sorry, I know you jump in on a lot of these lives. I appreciate it. Sorry for pronouncing your name wrong. George as well. So I was getting basically short story, even shorter. I forgot exactly where I was, but basically my whole entire life revolved around just going to the library and going to the gym pretty much, and then coaching people for about 10 hours a week or so. And honestly, it stayed that way even after college for the most part. I still pretty much spend 2 to 3 days a week just devoted just to studying continued education, and then work out pretty much every morning, about 5 days a week or so, sometimes 6 if I'm really feeling it up to it and stuff of that sort. So I knew that was my core values, and I knew I wanted to live a health conscious lifestyle, and I knew already just, working behind a computer all day and being inside, eating poor food, being around those toxic environments, those high pressure, endless deadline type of environments was already not normal, right? Because I saw the side effects or the symptoms of that through various of my clients over the years. And also just studying a lot of things on mental and physical health myself, it became instantly obvious that the human being has not evolved to live that way. And of course, there are no absolutes. You'll find one little exception here and there, just like I'm pretty sure you can find a person that smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day and also lives to be 100, but it's rare. And most of the time people break down in those environments. And once again, if you just look at the general stats, it's obvious that that's the case. Okay. It's very convincing that something's not working in our society as a whole. If 9 out of 10 people right now are metabolically sick in America, in a country that's supposedly the most prosperous country in the world, et cetera, et cetera. So clearly something's not working, because what business stays in business with 90% of its clients failing? You know what I mean? For example, especially U.S. healthcare system right now, where the number one reason for bankruptcies personal bankruptcies in the U.S. accounting for 65% of all personal bankruptcies are just health issues. And right now, the U.S., when you average it out, is spending about $14,000 to $15,000 a year on medical expenses per citizen. And we're the sickest we've ever been as a nation. So clearly, I mean, the symptom management model, especially the symptom management model of the medical system, is for sure not working. It's probably doing more harm than good in the sense that they don't even focus on your story and why you got sick. They just focus on the symptom. And unfortunately, a lot of times, these medical drugs could be used, I feel, well in tandem with a great holistic program, but it's never done that way. It's usually you're just given a medical drug, and then the behavior or the belief system that led to that problem is never dealt with. And then if you never change the person that's causing the problem will always return. But unfortunately, in this case, the problem will always return, but plus more problems will return because of the side effects of all those medical drugs, requiring even more medical drugs with more side effects, et cetera, et cetera. And the person gets to 50 or 60 years old, and they just look freaking terrible. They feel terrible. Their blood work might look okay, but then you look at them and they look terrible. Let's just be honest. And it's totally not right. It's not normal. It's common for sure. Like I said, it's common. That's where the deception is, but it's not normal at all. And it's critical just to step back. And if you do want to go on an honest health and wellness journey, and it's totally up to you, just start seeing this as totally unacceptable and not adding any value to your life personally. In fact, it's dramatically decreasing the quality of your life by a tremendous amount and stuff of that sort. So that's critical. And this is where most people just get stuck, just unfortunately just at this level. They've normalized pathology completely, and there might be no hope for them unless they start shifting their core values and stuff of that sort. So another important thing to consider is we want to, when creating real change, you want to focus on freeing up your time, right? So you want some time to be able to step back and really have more time for yourself, not feel rushed, but also be able to step back and strategize of how you can get out of the cesspool of what a lot of society has become these days. Because once again, if you continue to work in environments where pretty much a lot of people there are mentally and physically sick, that's going to drag you down. You know, if you continue to be dependent on a paycheck in those environments, all that stuff, that's going to drag you down as well. So you need to create some free time for yourself so you can start strategizing and thinking of how to get out of there and start creating some autonomy, especially financially, so you can live a more health conscious lifestyle and stuff of that sort. So some things you can do, and I've done a comprehensive video on how to free up a lot of your time before, so I'm just going to quickly touch on a few of these subjects. I mean, first and foremost, definitely stop watching the news and erase all social media apps on your phone. Okay, I'm not like super hardcore about staying off social media like some people. I mean, if you do it, great. But just at least get rid of the apps on your phone and stop watching the news. And just if you eliminate those things based on just average numbers, you'll save about 10 to 15 hours a week. Now, 10 to 15 hours is a lot of time because you really I'm not talking about Olympic quality athletics or anything, but just to look your best, to feel your best, you need about 6 hours of workouts, counting the warm-ups as well, total per week. You really don't need, most people really don't need too much more than that. So if you just get rid of watching the news and you get rid of your social media apps, just right there gives you way more than enough time to spend way more than enough time in the gym, focusing on your physique, focusing on your health, on your appearance, etc., etc. And it's up to you, of course. It's up to your core values. What's more important, cruising around social media, listening to dummies, or having a great physique and great health? You know, it's up to you to pick. To me, it's obvious, but I might have different core values than you, you know? So it's up to you to pick what's important for you and where you allocate your 24 hours a day to, because everyone has the same amount of time. It's not like some people have more time and some people have less time. It's moreover about how to allocate your time. And being crystal clear on your core values and what's important to you is an important aspect of that, because without that, like if you don't know who you are, you don't know your core values. And also if you don't know who you are, you don't know anything. You literally don't know anything. Like you're guessing everything. You're guessing that you're going into the right job. You're guessing that you're going into the right relationships. You're guessing that you're going into the right friendships, etc., etc. And sometimes relying on dumb luck works, but it's far in between, and I find not very consistent with results either. So you have to kind of know who you are to identify your core values, and then basically use those core values to identify how you need to allocate your time appropriately to reflect those core values. That's usually the chain of events that happens and stuff of that sort. And remember, like I mentioned many times, the wider the disconnect between who you want to be and who you actually are in the world, the more mental and physical pathology has to form. You have to form maladaptive behavior to deal with that level of fakeness to yourself. And that maladaptive behavior can take on a myriad of forms, sometimes socially acceptable behavior, such as working too much. Many people use work as a distraction from their silent misery that they live basically in their entire life. Most people use food as a form of maladaptive behavior as well, because food accepts you for who you are. You have the power there, and those two things you really don't feel like you have in your life. Or you would be more true to yourself if you did, and you wouldn't have to abuse food to gain that feeling, because you would already just have that feeling 24/7 if you were just being more true to yourself and actually living that. But in order to do that, you have to know who you are first, before you do that. And I can provide some things that's worked for me over the years. It might not work for you later on in the live and stuff of that sort. So once again, just simple things like deleting your apps from your phone, your social media apps, and also just getting rid of watching the news. Again, the news, like what's the point of even watching the news? Like, okay, like what did that submarine thing or whatever is going on these days? Or how about that Ukraine situation, or the whole thing with the virus? Like, okay, the thing with Ukraine, like, are you going to go to Ukraine? Are you working with the generals there on the ground? Are you going to go volunteer there? Is how that war ends up going to impact your life whatsoever? Then what's the point of following it? You can, once again, limited amounts of time. Of course, if you have unlimited amounts of time and unlimited brain capacity, you can do everything, but it's not the case. So you really have to, once again, be clear about your core values and then allocate that. And just make sure you're not using electronics such as the news and social media as a form of distracting and numbing yourself out, et cetera, because a lot of people do that as well. They just kind of find the world too overwhelming and they need something to numb themselves out occasionally. So oftentimes they use social media or they use the news to do that. So definitely avoid those loops as well, because you should be focusing on establishing a more balanced lifestyle so you don't have that feeling to begin with and don't feel tempted to use that social media and all that stuff. And yes, real change takes real change, obviously, so you have to change the person as a whole, and stuff of that sort. So free up your time. Another thing you can do is just work remote if you can. This alone would save you like 5 hours in commute every single week rather. Okay, so let's say you eliminated the social media apps, you eliminated the news, you eliminated driving to work by simply working remotely. All of a sudden you're looking at, you have 15 or maybe even 20 hours of extra time per week, which is a gargantuous amount of time and way more time than you need to look your best, feel your best, have enough sleep, have enough me time for hobbies, even have enough time for hanging out with friends and stuff of that sort. Way more than enough time. So obviously there's many more things you can do, just kind of touching the surface about the importance of that. And once you have enough free time, you can kind of step back and observe the pathology of modern society a little bit more clearly, and then figure out ideally how to get out of that kind of surrounding and stuff of that sort. So free up. Another thing is you want to, a lot of times what keeps people bogged down too, especially in career paths that clearly no longer serve them in any way outside of getting a paycheck, is financial freedom, right? That's a big thing. And especially with health goals as well, people They're like, oh, it's too expensive to be healthy. But in reality, if you really calculate the cost, it's way more expensive to be unhealthy directly and indirectly, okay, from a social stigma perspective, as well as just the type of energy you put out there. I mean, if you're unhealthy and sickly and stuff of that sort, you like typically attract that type of energy to you, et cetera, et cetera. And so some things, for example, that I see a lot of people that really bogs them down, and it goes back to the first thing I mentioned about normalized pathology. And in this case, I see a lot of people funding their own pathology unknowingly, like totally goes under their radar. They don't even consciously perceive it. So for example, it's, like travel season time. And here's, in my opinion, if I was a person that's, like very overweight, not liking at all how I look, on a bunch of medical drugs, or not even on a bunch of medical drugs, but just feeling not quite myself, feeling depressed, anxious, whatever, have anger issues at work, or short-tempered, always feel rushed, etc., etc. So a lot of people in this situation, let's say you have like a male that's overweight, on medical drugs, without even a second thought, they'll easily book a $3,000 international trip, which is about the cost of a 2-week international trip, like a week and a half. Especially if you're going to Western Europe, then it's probably even more. They'll totally do this, like easily, without even a second thought. But never hire a coach or never go to courses, which are like half that cost basically, or even roughly close to that cost if it's like a good coach. Never hire a coach. Oh, it's too expensive. Too expensive for organic food, but this $3,000 trip I'm going on, oh, not totally okay, and then you see them in their photos. They're always like wearing a shirt. They're like turning their body to the side, trying to hide the fact that they're overweight and stuff of that sort in the photos. Now, presuming, once again, I'm making these statements, presuming the person doesn't want to be overweight or doesn't want to be on medical drugs, and instead of spending money on getting coaching or on health courses or on books to get themselves out of that pathology, they spend that money on trips, which only provide like a sugar high at best. And then, a week or two goes by and they're back to the same exact environment that led them to all their issues that they're having that they don't want to have anyways. But they're down $3,000 or even more at this point. And they do it over and over and over and over again. And then when you tell these people like, oh, you should buy organic, like what's the organic food? What's the first thing they say? It's, oh, it's too expensive. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, you should get a coach, to help you lose all that unwanted weight, and also just to help change the belief system that led to all those issues that led to all that unwanted weight, and maybe educate you on what real food is in nutrition, and educate you on what pathology patterns are in life, so you can change your life for the better. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, but how about this trip you paid for just recently for $3,000? Oh. You see? A lot of people, they're funding their own pathology. They don't even know it. It's totally under the radar because society has normalized pathology. And unfortunately, all these trips and everything don't do that much for these people, except provide trigger highs at best and a few photos where some people like it on Instagram and stuff like that. Dylan is in the house. Matthew, Joe, Mattias, I don't know if I pronounced it right. Let me know if I pronounced your name right. But yeah, they provide like a few Facebook likes and stuff of that sort. Like, who cares? You just paid $3,000, $4,000 for that trip. Dude, that money can be way better spent on good coaching, health courses, great health books, and that stuff, establishing great health and looking great. You get to experience that every single day, all year freaking round. Okay, what does that trip do for you? Absolutely nothing. But these people are like, once again, pathology is normalized in our culture. It's totally obvious. And the unfortunate truth is these same people fund their own misery unknowingly oftentimes, because it totally goes under the radar, because once again, pathology has been normalized in our culture. Another thing that I found very interesting is the average American spends $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses every year, every single year, on eating out, alcohol, subscription services, that new iPhone, whatever. all that stuff. What does it do? What does it do for the person at the end of the day? Like nothing except sugar highs at best. And oftentimes they use a lot of those activities to numb themselves out from a life that they don't want. And once again, with these same people, you tell them like, hey, why don't you hire a coach, or once again, take health courses. It's way cheaper than spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on all this BS that you're just doing and not even questioning twice. You're like, oh, it's too expensive. So once again, going back to pathology has been normalized in our culture today, and it's so sad to see. So sad to see, especially when these people have kids too, because unfortunately they're going to pass these belief systems down to their kids, and their kids are probably going to be the same way. And remember, 80% of what a kid learns from a parent is just by observation. So if they see you on a bunch of medical drugs, overworking yourself to death, very overweight, they're going to see that as the solution to life's problems and do the same exact thing. And if it's not serving you, if it's causing you to be miserable, well, I wonder what's going to happen to them, okay? You don't need to be a PhD in psychologist to know the answer to that. So Dylan is in the house. Dylan is a great friend of mine. And honestly, Dylan, I met him at the Czech Institute, and he was the very first person I ever was a guest on a podcast. He invited me the first time. I was totally against doing podcasting of any sort. And so really thankful, because it opened my eyes to the ability to be on podcasts and stuff of that sort, which I ended up eventually doing. And luckily just was around people that accepted my message, such as Mark Bell, Paul Chek, obviously, Josh Trent from Wellness Force. Thank you for having me on your podcast. From Carnivore Cast, Scott Zablensky, never could pronounce his name correct. Sean Baker, obviously, thank you again for your support. Ben Greenfield as well, thank you for your support with writing articles on my book and stuff of that sort. Always appreciate it. There are a few others. Appreciate every single one of you, obviously. And Dylan, of course, thank you for introducing me even to that idea. So give me a second, guys. So one thing like you guys can do during the weekend is sit down and really look over all your expenses and see where all your money is going. And you will see you're spending about $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses. And if you're hooked up on a bunch of like medical drugs or overweight, have low self-esteem because of how you look, figure out like you should be investing that money, in my opinion, in courses, in, once again, books. You could even buy books for very cheap on Amazon, used books for like $1 or $2. You should be hiring a mentor. Feel free to reach out to me if you need any help in fast tracking your progress to get you out of that state of mental and physical pathology, because that will improve the quality of your life every single day of the whole entire year, because your happiness in life is only going to be determined by your level of health and wellness. So let's say you're like sought after at work, you're making great money, everyone thinks you're really smart. So let's say that's graded as an A, but your health is like at a C minus. Your quality of life is actually at a C minus, because your health is basically acting as a ceiling to how much happiness you could have in your life. Like just use common sense here. Last time you were sick with the flu or something, okay, well, you lost enjoyment in pretty much everything really quick while you were sick. Same exact thing with low grade. And I hate to say low grade because it's just bad grade in my opinion, of just not looking your best and not feeling your best all year and needing to take like a whole bottle of Xanax and like 2 cups of coffee every morning just to have enough energy to even drive into work or even log into your computer and stuff of that sort. So I would look into your expenses, and then it's up to you. It's your core values at the end of the day. I mean, personally, like, I don't know. It's so obvious to me, obviously looking your best and not having to take medical drugs in the morning and feeling your best is awesome, but it might not be a core value for everyone. Okay. So I don't want to project either. So it's up to you to decide, and you always know the honest answer, no matter what you tell yourself intellectually and stuff of that sort. So once you kind of free up your time, once you free up your finances a bit and regain your health, I think it's also time to spend a lot of time focusing on your core values and really being very, 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 very crystal clear about those core values. This is very critical. And if you kind of mess this part up, you will always find yourself in what I refer to as false paths in life. You'll get into the wrong occupations, wrong relationships, wrong for you, not wrong in general, just wrong for you. So core values are basically, like for me, I like working remote versus in person. Okay, so if you like remote versus in person, but you're working in person, then there's a disconnect of your core values right there. You know, let's say you like working, I like working twice a week, 2 days a week. That's it. That's all I work is 2 days a week. So obviously if I was working 6 days a week, that would be a disconnect in my core values, right? So I like to spend 2 days a week in continued education and reading. So like right now I'm reading a lot into quantum psychology and quantum physics. So if I didn't have those 2 days, that would be another disconnect in my core values, right? Core values can extend to more simpler things like how you look. I like to look lean, like more on the muscular side, not like overly muscular, but not like very skinny either. So there's another core value. And then I make sure to attend to that core value in the real life, because just talking about this stuff does nothing at the end of the day. Okay? It's actually doing it and making it happen in a world, once again, that is normalized physical pathology. Scott is in the house. Good to see you as always. Another core value would be like, I like, let's say wild meats and wild fish. You know, predominantly like what I eat is elk, deer, boar, and wild fish and stuff like that, and grass-fed and grass-finished bison and beef. Okay, there's another core value. So obviously if I was eating factory farm food or McDonald's every day, that would be a disconnect in core values, right? And stuff of that sort. Also, I like to make sure I'm with like a loving partner, which I've been with for like 7 or 8 years already. Okay, so that's you. So if that's a big part for you, then that's a core value. Then you need to write that down. And oftentimes, unfortunately, you don't know your core. You don't know like who you are until you know who you are not first, right? So many of you probably remembered in your 20s, you're typically are very scattered, you know, in terms of what you like and don't like. So you're trying a bunch of things. And then it's important to, once something doesn't work out, you know, thank that situation, obviously. Like say a job doesn't work out, instead of being angry about it, you know, thank that job for showing you what you don't want in your future path, you know, or thank that past relationship for showing you what you don't want in your next relationship. But it's important to listen to that gut instinct, write it down, and then make sure you don't copy and paste problems as you continue as well. That's a huge, huge issue. Also, people just think it's familiar, so I'll go with it, but familiar doesn't mean good or right for you, right? It just means what you've been doing for a long time, and maybe, probably, I would say that's what's led to a lot of your mental and physical health issues and your poor appearance. So, core values is critical. It's critical to find out, and there is a lot of confusion on finding your passion or purpose, which I think is a little bit of a silly concept and stuff of that sort. So one of the things, once again, that's worked very well for me, and it takes trial and error, is really that model of try stuff, and if you don't like it, really listen to your gut instinct about it and kind of move on to the next thing, because you really just run into problems when you start nesting in areas of life that you don't like to be in, and building inferences and belief systems to support that nesting behavior. So a common thing I hear very often is you have a like very overweight male in their 40s or 50s that's been a corporate guy for quite a long time, and they don't like their job. You know, they don't like their job, but they start building belief systems. Instead of coming up with a solution, which is sometimes tough to do, I'm not denying it, they start developing and building inferences and belief systems to support their pathology. So, which is quicksand. If you start doing this and then you start building inferences upon inferences to support that belief system, you're basically doomed for life unless like a third party comes in and shows you that you're doing this, because oftentimes you can't solve a problem with the same belief system that led to the problem. So here's a typical example. So a person's, let's say a male is 45, 50, they've been in a job for a long time, they clearly hate it, and it's clearly totally decaying their mental and physical health. And you can totally see it in a lot of these people. They're like much older than they look, uh, or look much older than they are, rather. They're just very unhealthy, very overweight. Even the guys that kind of look skinny in work clothing, if you see them without work clothing, they're still like very droopy and quite overweight, actually. The average American male is around 27% body fat or something, which is obese, which is pretty much obese. Somewhere around there. I haven't checked the number in a while, but pretty heavy. And they start building belief systems. So here, belief system to support that pathology, because coming up with an answer is an answer that's more appropriate for them is oftentimes too difficult and also too stressful. So an example would be like, oh yeah, I don't like my job, but it provides me a paycheck and it matches my 401k plan. And then they also kind of change, they reframe the negative into a positive, like, oh, Bob, sure, he's a dickhead, but, he's overall a nice guy and whatever, I'll put up with him. Maybe I'm just not seeing it from his vantage point, although he's so annoying and stuff of that sort. I'll just reframe it in some positive way so I can make it more tolerable, etc., etc. Or, oh, my boss, he's clearly not looking out for me, or stuff like that. But hey, whatever, I get this matching 401k plan and I could retire when I'm 65 or 68. And although the average American lives until like 72 years old, I'll at least have 3 years to enjoy my life, maybe, although usually people end up being so sick by the time they retire, they really just don't enjoy much and stuff of that sort, because they're just too sick to do anything and stuff of that sort. So reframing, changing the positive and changing the negative into the positive, building belief systems to justify continuing on a path you don't want to be on. These are slippery slopes which could get you lost like very, very quickly and keep you lost for your whole entire life. So I'd be very careful with that. And only honestly, when you are kind of doing those bullshit strategies. And you have to be really in tune and really honest with yourself and really wanting the best for yourself to even answer that honestly. And without those fundamental traits, you'll be lost your entire life, and then just hiring one healthcare professional with another because you just have one symptom pop up. Maybe if you're lucky, get rid of that symptom just a year later for another symptom to pop up. And it's just like all of your life, you're just chasing one symptom after another, etc., etc. And in terms of being stuck in paths, it's important to remember, like, okay, let's look at the central nervous system. Like, what is the purpose of the central nervous system? If we look at the central nervous system, it's basically kind of like your brain and your spinal cord and then all the nerves that go out of it, etc., etc. You have to remember, like, your brain is encased in a skull. It never kind of sees the outside world, right? It uses its 5 human senses to basically gather a lot of information from the external environment and abstract that information in a simplified way for you to be able to interact with that external environment and be able to survive. And what is the only purpose of the central nervous system? It's survival. And that's it. There's literally no other purpose for the central nervous system. Its main goal for you is to get you to survive and function in the external world to increase your chances of reproduction and survival. So think about it. And you can meditate on this. It's the weekend. A lot of you have a little bit of free time. Just go sit with a journal on the beach, or just go sit and close your eyes on the beach or wherever and think about everything you do in life. Every single little thing. Like, oh, why do I need to go to college and I need to get good grades in college. So why? So I can get a job. Oh, why do you need a job? So I can get a good job. So why do you need a good job? Oh, so I can make a living and have this house and have this food. Oh, why is that? So I can survive better. Even if you go on spiritual paths or enlightenment paths, like, why do I need to go do yoga or go to this spiritual retreat or this and that so I can become enlightened and I could navigate the world better and be more free in my thoughts? So why? So you could survive better. That's it. Okay? Think about even how ludicrous the concept and how crazy the concept of having a purpose in life is. I mean, think about it. Just think about it objectively without your ego. You're looking at billions of galaxies, right, in the universe. Billions of galaxies. And we're in the Milky Way galaxy, and there are God knows how many millions of stars in that galaxy, or maybe even billions, I don't know for sure. And we're like a small little, Earth is like a small little invisible and measurable speck in that Milky Way galaxy. And even if the Earth just disappeared from the Milky Way galaxy, the universe wouldn't even notice anything's missing. So out of those billions of galaxies, in our galaxy, we have a planet, then you are an invisible speck in that planet. Some neurotransmitters come together and you have a conscious perception of those neurotransmitters after the fact. And you go, oh, I have a purpose. And that's ludicrous. There is no purpose. And that's actually a really good thing. Because if there is no purpose, and a lot of the belief systems that you harbor are basically just trances imposed by your central nervous system to increase your chances of survival, you don't have to feel too attached to any one system, especially if it's not serving you the way you feel you want to be served any longer. And sometimes there are situations where it did serve you at one point, but it no longer serves you at a later point in life. So don't feel too attached to have to do a certain script or be under a certain trance. Just realize that anything you do is basically your central nervous system's attempt to increase your survival. Literally everything you do is for that reason. Oh, why do I need even something as selfless as having kids? Oh, I do it for me. Oh, why do you have kids? Oh, to spread my genes and my family name. Why? So you could survive better. So genes could survive better. Oh, why do you have kids? Oh, so I can have someone, to spread my beliefs on and have someone that can take care of me when I get old. Why? So I could survive better. That's it. It always comes back to survival. So, which is a great thing, because this frees you from being locked into any one belief system. Because if you're in a belief system or a path that no longer serves you, that will lead you into the wrong core values, and that will lead you into various forms of maladaptive and pathological behavior, because you always find yourself in the wrong jobs, wrong relationships, etc., etc. So you have to look at it objectively that way and not be too much under the trance of, especially like your personality and stuff of that sort, which isn't even you to begin with. So that's it. I mean, that's a general overview of what I wanted to cover today. Again, I was supposed to kind of interview someone today, so I just came up with this one at the top of my head. But it's honestly better information than if you're looking to go on an honest journey, if you really attend to a lot of those variables. And in this group, I have a bunch of videos on a lot of these concepts, which I expanded on in way more detail that you guys can dive into. And it may or may not help you. It's not for everyone. There are no absolutes, of course. But that's just some things to ask yourself as like an adult, because numbing yourself out, being delusional, living in a state of delusion, is not helping you. It might provide some short-term pain relief, but all you're doing is just making things worse, more and more worse the older you get in life, if you don't attend to those issues and stuff of that sort. I see it all the time. And there's a reason 9 out of 10 Americans are now metabolically sick, because there's a tremendous amount of detachment and dissociation between who they really want to be and then who they actually are in the world, or just they're so unconscious to their behaviors to begin with, and they don't even know who they are to begin with. And they're just kind of living off a script or a trance of social programming and stuff of that sort. If you want to dive into this stuff, it's great resource. I mean, some great resources would be The Way of the Human, Volume 1, 2, and 3. It would be an awesome starting point. The Crowd by Gustavo Le Bon is pretty good to understand the pathology of crowds in modern society. Pretty damn good book, actually. One of my favorites. Let me think of some other books. I mean, there's so many on this topic. I think those are great. Studying the Enneagram is great to identify who you are not, because you have to obviously first be clear on who you are not to get closer to to get a better definition of who you are, right? To make sure you don't allocate too much energy into false paths led by false core values and stuff of that sort. So I hope this helps. Thank you everyone for jumping on the live, and have a great weekend. Just some action steps and some recaps. We talked about pathology of modern society. There are almost no healthy people left in our culture. A lot of them are very mentally and physically sick. If you don't see it, it's simply because you've also normalized yourself to what mental and physical pathology is. The importance of, getting rid of social media apps and also not watching the news to free up your time. The importance of allocating your money appropriately and not funding your own mental and physical pathology. The great importance of identifying your core values and stuff of that sort. And I'm pretty sure I covered one or two more things. So have a good weekend, everyone. I hope everyone enjoys it. And I will see you guys. Hopefully I'll have a guest next week, but I'll try to figure something out. Anyways, see you guys then, and hope you have a good one. Take care.